So this will probably be the last video, the second part of Thumbelina, finishing Antique Fairy Tales, illustrated by Judy Mastrangelo. Yeah. I have a playlist of all the stories if you ever want to go back and listen to them. So, it's over here. Wait a second. But Thumbelina did not trouble herself about it. She did not think much of the neighbor, for he was only a mole. He came and paid a visit in his black velvety fur. He was so rich and so learned, said the field mouse, and his dwelling was 20 times larger than hers. He possessed great learning, but he could not bear the sun and the beautiful flowers. On the latter he seldom spoke, for he had never seen them. Thumbelina had to sing, and she sang, cockchafer, fly away, and when the parson goes afield. So the mole fell in love with her because of her beautiful voice, but he said nothing, for he was a prudent man. A short time before, he had dug a passage through the earth from his house to theirs, and the field mouse and Thumbelina received permission to take a walk in this passage as often as they liked, but he begged them not to be afraid of the dead bird which lay there. It was an entire bird, with feathers and beak, who had probably died only a short time before, and was buried just where the mole had made his passage. The mole took a piece of decayed wood in his mouth, for that glimmers like a light in the dark, and went out in front, and lighted them through the long dark passage. When they came to the spot where the dead bird lay, the mole thrust his broad nose against the ceiling, and pushed the earth up so that the large hole was made, through which the light could shine down. In the middle of the floor lay a dead swallow, with its beautiful wings pressed close to its sides, and its feet and head drawn under its feathers. The poor bird had certainly died of cold. This grieved Thumbelina very much. She was very fond of all the little birds who had sung and twittered so beautifully to her all the summer. But the mole kicked him with his crooked legs and said, "He doesn't pipe any more now. How miserable it must be to be born a little bird. Thank heaven that can happen to none of my children. Such a bird has nothing but his tweet, and is obliged to starve in the winter." "Yes, you may well say that as a sensible man," said the field mouse. "What does the bird get for all his twittering when winter comes? He must starve and freeze. I suppose that is considered very grand." Thumbelina said nothing, but when the two others had turned their backs upon the bird, she bent down, and putting the feathers aside which covered his head, and she kissed him upon his closed eyes. "Perhaps it was he who sang so beautifully to me in the summer," she thought. "How much pleasure he has given me, the dear beautiful bird." The mole now stopped up the hole through which the daylight shone in, and then accompanied the ladies home. But at night Thumbelina could get no sleep, so she got up from her bed and wove a fine large carpet of hay, which she carried along and spread out over the dead bird. She also laid the tender stamina of flowers, which were as soft as cotton, and when she had found in the field mouse's room around the bird, so that he might lie warm. "Goodbye, you beautiful little bird," she said. "Goodbye, and many thanks for your beautiful singing in the summer, and when all the trees were green and the sun shone down warm upon us." Then she laid her head upon the bird's heart, but the bird was not dead. He was only lying there benumbed, and having now been warmed again, was coming back to life. In autumn all the swallows fly away to warm countries, but if there is one who is belated, it gets so frozen that it drops down as if dead, and remains lying where it falls, and soon the cold snow covers it. Thumbelina trembled, so frightened was she, for the bird was big, very big compared to her, who was only an inch long. But she took courage, and laying the cotton more closely round the poor swallow, she fetched a leaf of mint, which she herself had used as a blanket, and laid it over the bird's head. The next night she again stole up to him. He was alive, but very weak, and could open his eyes only for a short moment to look at Thumbelina, who stood before him with a piece of decaying wood in her hand, for she had no other lantern. "Thank you, my pretty little child," said the sick swallow to her. "I have been so beautifully warm. Soon I shall get my strength back, and will then be able to fly about in the warm sunshine outside." "Oh," said she, "it is cold outside. It is snowing and freezing. Stay in your warm bed. I will take care of you." Then she brought the swallow some water in a leaf of a flower. This the swallow drank, and told her how he had torn one of his wings on a thorn bush, and had therefore been unable to fly so quickly as the other swallows, who had flown far away to warm countries. She had at last fallen to the ground, but could not remember anything more, and did not at all know how he had come there. So he remained down there the whole winter, and Thumbelina nursed and tended him with all her heart. Neither the mole nor the field mouse knew anything about it, for they did not like the poor swallow at all. As soon as spring came, the sun warmed the earth. The swallow said goodbye to Thumbelina, who opened the hole which the mole had made up above. The sun shone in beautifully upon them, and the swallow asked her whether she would go with him. She could sit upon his back, he said, and they would fly far into the green forest. But Thumbelina knew that it would grieve the old field mouse if she left her like that. "No, I cannot," she said. "Goodbye, goodbye, you good pretty little girl," said the swallow, and flew out into the sunshine. Thumbelina looked after him, and the tears came into her eyes, for she was very fond of the poor swallow. "Tweet, tweet," sang the bird, and flew into the green forest. Thumbelina was very sad. She got no permission to go out into the warm sunshine. The corn which had been sown in the field over the house of the field mouse grew up high into the air. It was a thick wood for the poor little girl, who was only an inch high. "Now you are a bride, Thumbelina," said the field mouse. "Our neighbor has asked for your hand. What a great piece of luck for a poor child. Now you will have to make your outfit, both woolen and linen clothes, for you must lack nothing when you are the mole's wife." Thumbelina had to turn the spindle, and the field mouse hired four spiders to weave for her day and night. Every evening the mole used to visit them, and was always saying that at the end of summer the sun would not shine so warm by a long way, and that it was burning the earth so hard as a stone. Yes, when the summer was over, he would celebrate his marriage with Thumbelina, but the latter was not at all pleased, for she could not bear the tiresome mole. Every morning when the sun rose, and every evening when it set, she stole out to the door, and when the wind parted the ears of corn, so that she could see the blue sky, she would think how bright and beautiful it was out there, and would have a great longing to see the dear swallow again. But he never came back. He had probably flown far away into the beautiful green wood. When autumn came, Thumbelina had her whole outfit ready. "You are to be married in 4 weeks," said the field mouse to her, but Thumbelina wept, and said she would not have the tiresome mole. "Fiddlesticks," said the field mouse, "don't be obstinate, or I will bite you with my white teeth. He is a fine man who you are going to marry. The queen herself has not such black velvety fur. He has a full kitchen and cellar. Be thankful for it." Now the wedding was to take place. The mole had already come to fetch Thumbelina. She was to live with him deep down under the earth, and never come out to the warm sunshine, for that he did not like. The poor little girl was very sad, and she was now to say goodbye to the beautiful sun, which, while she lived with the field mouse, she had always had permission to look at from the door. "Goodbye, bright sun," she said, and stretched her arms out high, and walked a little way off from the house of the field mouse, for now the corn was cut, and there remained only the dry stubbles. "Goodbye, goodbye," she said, and wound her arms round a little red flower, which was still blooming there. "Greet the little swallow for me if you see him." Tweet, tweet, suddenly sounded above her head. She looked above and saw the little swallow, who was just flying by. When he spied Thumbelina, he was very pleased. She told him how unwilling she was to marry the ugly mole, and that she would have to live deep down under the earth, where the sun never shone. She could not help crying and telling it. "The cold winter is coming now," said Swallow. "I am flying away to warm countries. Will you come with me? You can sit on my back, and we shall fly away from the ugly mole and his dark room, far away over the mountains to warm countries where the sun shines more beautifully than it here, where it is always summer and there are glorious flowers. Do you fly with me, dear little Thumbelina, you who saved my life when I lay frozen in the dark underground cellar?" "Yes, I will go with you," said Thumbelina, and she seated herself on the bird's back, with her feet on his outspread wing, binding her girdle fast to one of his strongest feathers. Then the swallow flew up into the air, over forest and sea, high up over the great mountains, where the snow always lies, and Thumbelina began to freeze in the cold air. But she crept under the bird's warm feathers, and only put out her little head to admire all the beauty beneath her. At last they came to warm countries. There the sun shone far brighter than here. The sky seemed twice as high, and in the ditches and on the hedges grew the finest green and blue grapes. In the woods hung citron and oranges. The air was heavy with the scent of myrtle and mint, and on high roads the prettiest little children ran and played with large colored butterflies. But the swallow flew still farther, and it became more and more beautiful. Under the most majestic green trees by the blue lake stood a marble castle of dazzling whiteness, all of the olden time. Vines wound themselves round the tall pillars, and up above there was a number of swallows' nests, and in one of these lived the swallow who was carrying Thumbelina. "This is my house," said the swallow, "but it would not be proper for you to live with me here, and my arrangements are not such as you would be satisfied with. Pick out for yourself one of the most beautiful flowers that are growing down there, and I will put you on it, and you shall have everything as nice as you can wish." "That is glorious," she said, clapping her little hands. There lay a large white marble pillar, which had fallen to the ground and broken into 3 pieces. Between these grew the finest large white flowers. The swallow flew down with Thumbelina, and set her upon one of the broad petals. But what was her surprise? There in the middle of the flower sat a little man, as white and transparent as if he were made of glass. He wore the prettiest golden crown on his head, and had splendid little wings on his shoulders. He himself was no bigger than Thumbelina. He was the angel of the flower. In every flower lived such a little man or woman, but this one was the king of all. There's the illustration there. I'm guessing that's Thumbelina. But heavens, how beautiful he is, whispered Thumbelina to the swallow. The little prince was very frightened at the sight of the swallow, for it was a great bird compared to him, who was so small and delicate. But when he spied Thumbelina, he was greatly pleased. She was the prettiest little girl he had ever seen. He therefore took his golden crown from off his head and put it upon hers, asking what her name was and whether she would be his wife. Then she should be queen of all the flowers. He was indeed quite a different man to the son of the toad and the mole with the black velvety fur. She said yes to the grand prince, and out of every flower came a lady and a gentleman, so dainty that they were a pleasure to behold. Each one brought Thumbelina a present, But the best of all was a pair of beautiful wings from a large white fly. These were fastened onto Thumbelina's back, and now she could fly from flower to flower. There was much rejoicing, and the little swallow sat up in his nest and was to sing the bridal song. This he did as well as he could, although in his heart he was sad, for he was so fond of Thumbelina and would have liked to never separate himself from her. "You shall not be called Thumbelina," said the flower angel to her. "That is an ugly name, and you are too pretty for it. We will call you Maya." "Goodbye, goodbye," said the little swallow with a heavy heart, and flew away from the warm countries back to Denmark. There he had a little nest over the window where the man lives who can tell tales. To him he sang "Tweet, tweet," and that's how we know the whole story. That's the end of the book, the end of Thumbelina. So let's look.